When governments want to reduce media scrutiny of something, when they want to bury something, they announce it on a Friday afternoon, preferably before a long weekend. That's what Trudeau did on Friday with this bizarre tweet by the CRTC, the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, Trudeau's radio and TV regulator, except, as you know, a few months ago, Trudeau's Bill C-11 gave that old, useless relic astonishing new powers to regulate the internet. Here's the tweet by the CRTC. They said, "Today, we're taking a major step towards modernizing Canada's broadcasting system. Following broad consultations, we are releasing our first two decisions, including which online streaming services must register with us." Modernize, eh? Do you think that a government agency can modernize anything, especially the internet? Has the internet been waiting for 25 years for Justin Trudeau and his appointees to fix it, to make it modern? Have the geniuses in Silicon Valley been asking for help to modernize things? Because compared to the Liberal Party of Canada, they're old-fashioned, they don't know anything about technology. Come on, the CRTC is a joke. Created in the age of radio and TV back in 1976. It's been obsolete for more than a decade, probably 2 decades, other than for handing out lucrative monopolies to Canada's cell phone cartel. Canadians literally pay the highest cell phone rates in the world. Thanks, CRTC. The CRTC has various predecessors stretching back to the advent of radio. Almost 100 years ago, the reason the government said it was necessary back then is there was limited bandwidth on radio. If you have a radio station, let's say at 1060 on the AM dial, you can't have another radio station nearby that's close to it on that frequency. So there was a physical limit. You needed a regulator. It was a century-old problem. There are unlimited TV channels on your cable package, on streaming services like Netflix. There's satellite radio. Of course, there's YouTube and podcasts and live streaming. Now, the internet is unlimited. It's not like AM radio stations. And everyone can be a creator now. Ordinary people can become huge stars on Twitter or Facebook or TikTok if they have something smart or funny or interesting to say. It's all being very hard for the regulators and gatekeepers and lobbyists at the CRTC. They were left behind until Trudeau gave those old cronies power over the internet. And now they want YouTubers and other talent to register with the government. Really? So journalists, anyone with a large audience, register with the government. I've heard that phrase before. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in federal court in Toronto where Trudeau's lawyers told the court that I, as an author, should have to register with the government to write a book that was critical of Justin Trudeau. They said that. They literally argued that. I'm the first Canadian author in history who's been ordered to register my books with the government. There were 24 books about Justin Trudeau published in the 2019 election. Mine was the only critical one. Mine was the only one investigated, prosecuted, convicted, and fined by police and Elections Canada. And don't think the CRTC wasn't watching. They watched and they noticed and they learned that no one cared. Well, a lot of ordinary people cared, but not a single so-called journalism advocacy group called the Canadian Association of Journalists, Canadian Journalists for Free Expression, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, Amnesty International, PEN Canada. Not a single journalism advocate or authors advocate cared. Not even enough just to tweet about it, let alone to send a lawyer to court to intervene in the case. The CRTC saw that Trudeau has successfully subverted and undermined the media by subsidizing it and bribing it. So they learned, they knew that if they could force me to register my book, they could force others to register their podcasts and live streams. I should point out, not everyone was silent when my book was being prosecuted. Jordan Peterson saw the danger and he tweeted up a storm in support of me. I'm grateful to him. He stood on principle and now they're coming for him as Canada's leading YouTuber. He says he won't comply. It'll be interesting to see if they prosecute him and who will come to his aid if they do. As my old friend John O'Sullivan always said to me, it's easier to fight in the first ditch than in the last ditch. Here's his tweet. Jordan Peterson says, "Take your modernization and stuff it where the sun never shines." I hope that means he won't comply, but they will surely prosecute him. They've been looking for a reason to prosecute him. As Lavrenti Beria, the head of Stalin's secret police in the Soviet Union, used to say, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime," as in they'll get you on something, anything, even if they have to manufacture a fake crime to get you, which they just did on Friday. This shocking decision was not debated, let alone voted on by Parliament. It's a decree, like something Castro would do, but it's pretty certain that the Liberals would have won the vote if they had put it to Parliament. The NDP are even worse than the Liberals. Here's NDPer Charlie Angus, who wants to make a government list of conservative activists.
Recently, I crossed a new Rubicon in 23 years of public service. I had to ask the OPP to come and answer phones at my office because we were being overwhelmed with threats of violence against me, my staff, my family. Welcome to public life in 2023, where death threats and intimidation are becoming part of the playbook of the far right. And it's not just politicians. We're seeing death threats against journalists, school board trustees, medical professionals. What's bubbling up in the conspiracy swamps of 4chan, Reddit, and X are increasingly crossing the line into real life. Call it pitchfork politics. It represents a serious threat not just to public safety, but the very nature of democracy itself. These extremists make these threats because they can get away with it. It's time to mandate the RCMP to establish a registry of online domestic extremism. They need to have the resources to identify the sources of the threat, to make contact with them, and to keep track of them in a public registry. Democracy is in a very fragile place, and we need to work together to keep people and our system working.
Understand, he's not saying to make a list of actual criminals. It's already a crime to make a threat or whatever he claims happened. I don't believe him. He wants to put out known activists on his list. The Bloc Québécois is just as bad, and frankly, I'm not sure how every Conservative MP would vote. Here's Aaron O'Toole's old heritage critic, Alain Reyes, a couple of years ago, saying he wants more regulation of the internet too. This was an alleged Conservative.
But we don't see it in the bill. There's nothing in this bill that allows for the regulation of social media or platforms like YouTube. And it's clear, we would have liked to have seen this in the bill. The minister even says we have to find a way of preventing hate speech, conspiracy theories, and fake news that's shared. But right now in the bill, unfortunately, we won't even be able to amend it in that aspect, and because it's simply absent from the bill.
Well, he's not running again, thankfully, but how many other O'Toole Liberals are lurking in the Conservative Party? You know, it reminds me, and I think about this from time to time, I've told you the story before about how communist Romania made people register their typewriters with the police. First, they had to answer questions, what are you doing with such a dangerous and antisocial device as a typewriter? Then they had to give a sample of how the typewriter typed, and that sample would be kept on file at the police station so that if police discovered some samizdat, that's the word for illegal political commentary, the police could compare the samizdat, the illegal messages, with the output of different typewriters to see who would have typed it, like a fingerprint, since each old-fashioned typewriter was slightly different than the other. Registering typewriters. Let me read a little bit about that. This is from a Guardian story about a book about typewriters in Romania. When the typewriter arrives, she explains the system for registering it with the police, how it is fingerprinted, and how they must provide an explanation for why they need it. An instrument can be used to type about personal feelings, forbidden, or write anti-government pamphlets, forbidden. So yeah, in Canada, we don't register typewriters. Come on, that's crazy. We register podcasts and live streamers and YouTubes. We also register guns, and then we ban them. You'd think this would freak out everyone who should be freaked out, but that forgets that most of the regime media are fine with this because they know they're going to be fine on the inside. They're in the system. They're not punished by the system. I mean, the CBC's Aaron Wherry, he wrote a love letter to Trudeau that he called a book, pure CBC propaganda, published the same time as mine. He wasn't prosecuted or fined. I was. So why would Aaron Wherry stand up for my freedom? He wasn't going to be persecuted. CTV, CBC, Global News, The Star, the Globe and Mail, they're all on the inside of Trudeau's regime. You have to understand they like competitors being banned. They don't really care about freedom of speech or the independence of the press. They made that decision years ago when they decided to take Trudeau's cash. They chose power over independence. They chose bailouts over revenue from their own readers. They chose sides. They sided with the regime. By the way, the bailout media didn't just failed despite Trudeau's cash. I think they failed because of it. I mean, very few news organizations permit critical coverage of Trudeau anymore, and people can sense it. It shows. I mean, here's the state broadcaster's chief Ottawa reporter. Look at how proud she is. You know, Rebel News, as you know, started in my living room just 8 years ago, but already 41% of Canadians trust us more than trust age-old legacy media like CBC, CTV, the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail. How? Because we're independent. Well, it's Monday afternoon. I've seen very little in the last 72 hours on this from the media party. I've seen foreigners weighing in. Isn't that always the way? Foreigners who aren't on the take can criticize Trudeau. They see how he is. Glenn Greenwald, he's an American who lives in Brazil. He did a series of tweets about it. Look at this one here. He says the Canadian government, armed with one of the world's most repressive online censorship schemes, announces that all online streaming services that offer podcasts must formally register with the government to permit regulatory controls. And look at that, almost 50 million views. That's 10 times more than the entire combined audience of every news outlet in Canada. Now, a lot of those are foreign viewers, but it's not like this isn't interesting stuff. But like the trucker convoy, the media party up here knows who butters their bread, so they don't want to talk about it. If they talk about it, they want to take the Liberal side. Now, Glenn Greenwald does not take any Trudeau money, so he covers the news as he sees it. Elon Musk saw Glenn Greenwald's tweet, and he chimed in. Trudeau is trying to crush free speech in Canada. Shameful. Almost 40 million views of that tweet, too. I'm shy to say it. My own tweet on the subject got only 1.2 million views. But again, it shows that Canadians care about freedom, even if Trudeau and the media party don't. 1.2 million views, that's 5 times more than watch CBC's The National on any given night.